Hello everybody, happy Sabbath. Hope you've had a good week. We have another Bible story today. So we're going to get our Bible. And as you know, all of the stories in the Bible are true. They really happened to real people. None of them are made up or pretend. So we're going to open our Bible book and see where our story for this week is. So I'm going to open our Bible and we found our story right here in 2 Kings chapters 11 and 12, right there. And it looks like we found a baby. Part of our story is about a special baby. Part of our story is also in 2 Chronicles. So the next thing we're going to do is say our books of the Bible together. So join with me and let's go through them together. Okay? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. All right, so like I said, part of our story starts in 2nd Chronicles. So we're going to talk about that part first. And in 2nd Chronicles, the story begins with two kings. One king is king of Israel and one king is king of Judah. And those kings are Ahab and Jehoshaphat. Ahab is the bad king of Israel, and he's bad because he just doesn't choose to love God and worship him. Jehoshaphat is a good king, and he's king of Judah. The two kings come together because Ahab is asking the king of Judah, Jehoshaphat, to help him fight some enemies. And Jehoshaphat wants to know, are you sure that this is what we should do? Did you ask your prophets if this is what we should do? And Ahab says, oh yes, I have talked to my prophets and my prophets have given me the counsel that we should go ahead and we should fight these enemies of Israel and Judah together. And Jehoshaphat says, but did you talk to a prophet of God? Is there a prophet of God that you should ask first before we do this? And Ahab said, oh yes, there is a prophet of God. His name is Micaiah, and I don't want to ask him because every time I talk to him, he never has anything good to say about me or never anything good from God to tell me. I don't want to talk to him. But Jehoshaphat said, oh, we really need to hear what he has to say. So they did. They asked Micaiah, what do you think? Is this something that we should do? And Micaiah said, you know, you can, but you probably shouldn't. You're not going to win. This is not going to go well. Bad things are going to happen. And then it was up to the two kings to decide if they should listen to him and not go forward with their plan to fight these enemies of Israel and Judah, or if they should. They unfortunately decided that they should go ahead and fight. So instead of listening to God's prophet, they listened to the other prophets and they went out and they fought. And they didn't do very well. And unfortunately, Ahab got hurt very badly in the battle, and he was hurt so badly that he actually died. Then Jehoshaphat is still king of Judah, and when he goes home, his people talk to him, and they talk to him about this, that maybe he shouldn't have been fighting with somebody who doesn't love God, that maybe they shouldn't have gone out and tried to do this together, especially when he was told that that wasn't a good idea, and he agrees it was not a good idea. Well, not too long after that, there are three armies that come and are close and want to fight him and want to fight the people of Judah. And he's scared, and he decides that he needs to ask God. Maybe he learned from the decision he'd made before. He decides to ask God, what should I do? Should I go ahead and fight? And God sends him a very clear message and says, I will fight for you. All you have to do is wait on me and I will fight for you. So they come out and they stand still just like God told them to do. And instead of fighting, they sing. And they sing and they sing and they sing. And when they get to the place where their enemies are waiting for them, they find that their enemies had apparently already fought each other. And their enemies are all dead. They're all gone. There's nobody left to fight. All that's left is their stuff. And they are able to take that stuff home. It takes them a while to take everything home, but they are able to take it home. Well, Jehoshaphat is king for a while, and then eventually he dies, and he was a good king. He was faithful to God. After that, and then his son Joram becomes king, and Joram doesn't make good choices, and he doesn't love God with all of his heart, and he doesn't follow God like Jehoshaphat did, like David did. He decides to get married to Athaliah. Athaliah is Ahab's daughter, and Ahab didn't worship God. Athaliah doesn't worship God, and she is terrible. Joram decides to kill all of his brothers so that no one else will try to be king in his place or try to take being king away from him. And then when he dies, he doesn't get to be king for very long because he is so terrible. God doesn't allow him to rule for very long. Then his son Ahaziah becomes king. But Ahaziah is not a good king either, and he also dies. After he dies, Athaliah decides that she is going to take over, and she becomes the queen. And when she becomes queen, she decides, maybe like her other family member, like her son, to kill anyone that would try to take that away from her. So she goes and she kills everyone in the family that could become king or queen instead of her, except for one person. And that's the rest of our story. There is one little baby that she can't find because his aunt took him and she hid him. And you can find this story in My Bible Friends. And this is the story of Joash. So there he is. And his aunt and his uncle took him and they hid him in a place that they figured Athaliah would never find him. They decided to hide him in the temple. All right, so there he is in the temple. And while he was in the temple with them, he learned to walk and talk and grew just like babies do. And he gets taller, just like each of you have done. And once in a while, they probably walked around outside, and his uncle was able to show him some of the things that were happening to the temple. They weren't being able to take care of it because for many years the people had not been loving and worshiping God. They had been worshiping idols instead. So nobody was able to take care of or have enough money to fix and repair things that were breaking or coming apart in the temple. I'm sure, just like this storybook says, Uncle Jehoiada taught Joash from the Bible. Now, they didn't have a Bible like we have a Bible. They probably had a scroll to read, but he taught him all those stories about Adam and Eve and Moses and Abraham and Isaac and Joseph. all of those stories and taught him especially the laws of God, that people are supposed to love each other and take care of each other, and that people are supposed to love God with all their hearts. I'm sure he learned all of those things, and he loved God. Well, then one day, Joash became 7 years old, and his uncle Jehoiada decided it was time to bring him out of the temple and time to let everyone know that there was someone still alive who could become king, and someone who could love God and lead the people to love God. So Joash got ready, and Jehoiada and his wife got Joash ready to come out. They got some of the people ready and some of the soldiers that they could trust to be ready. And they did. They brought him out and they stood him next to a pillar. And you can see it in this picture too. He's standing next to a pillar with all these people around watching him. And there he is, standing there. And there were people there to blow trumpets and soldiers to guard him. And his uncle took a crown and put the crown on his head. And the people were clapping and singing and shouting, and the trumpets were making noise. And they were saying, "God save the king! God save the king!" Athaliah heard all that noise, and she came out, and she was angry. Here's a picture in this book of her coming out and seeing that someone was being made king instead of her. And she yelled and she shouted, "Treason, treason," and she tore her clothes, and she was commanding the soldiers to take Joash away. But instead of taking Joash away, they ended up taking her away. And Joash became king. So there he is, 7 years old, and he was the king. Now, I know some of you are close to 7 years old. Can you imagine being king of a whole bunch of people, of part of a country? That's amazing. So he did. He sat on a throne, and he was the king. And the people were so happy to have a new ruler. Well, as Joash grew up, he remembered something. And as he walked around the temple and the palace, he kept remembering something. He remembered how he and his uncle used to walk around and look at the temple, and how they used to see where it was broken and where it was falling apart and how much it needed help. And so he decided that one of the things he wanted to do was to fix God's house, because he loved God and he wanted the people to love and worship God too. So what could he do? There was no money to fix the temple, and he needed to figure out a way to raise some money. So he sent men throughout the land to collect money, and it didn't work, because the men collected money, but they didn't bring it back to spend on the temple. So he thought of a different plan. He got a box, and he asked that this box be put beside the gate, and that it would have a hole in the top, and that when the people came in the gate to the temple to worship, they would see it sitting there, and they would be able to drop their money in through the top of the box. So people came from near and far And as they walked in, they would drop their money. And when the box got full, then they would take it into a room in the temple and they would empty it out into bags. And then they would put it back at the gate again and it would fill up again. And they kept doing that and they kept doing that until they had the money that they needed to fix all the temple walls. And eventually they were able to do that. They were able to fix all those broken places and all the broken things that were in the temple. And the people could come and worship God in a very nice place. Everything looked good again. And Joash was happy to see that everything in the temple looked really good. For a long time, Joash did love God and he worshiped him until his uncle Jehoiada died. After his uncle Jehoiada died, Joash kind of forgot about God. And he stopped worshiping God and he stopped loving God like he did before. And he actually became angry with people who were telling him that he needed to do what God wanted him to do. So angry that he killed one of God's prophets, Zechariah. And unfortunately, when Joash died, he didn't love God anymore. So what we have to remember is that as we're growing up, we need to keep worshiping God every day, not just when we're little, not just when we're young, but also all through our lives. We need to remember to keep worshiping and obeying God even when we're old, because God wants us to love him throughout our lives. And then when we do that, we can help other people learn about him and we can help other people love God too. So if you could, let's bow our heads together and let's pray, okay? Dear Father in heaven, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for blessing us as we have talked about and learned about this story. These stories about the kings of Israel and Judah, how some of them loved you and obeyed you and you were able to bless them and bless the people. Some of them didn't love you and they didn't obey you, or they obeyed you sometimes but not all the time. Help us to remember that it's important to obey you all the time and to do the things that you would have us to do. It's always better, and other people are blessed when we do what you want us to do. Thank you. Help us to do that all through this week, to do the things that you want us to do. In your name, amen.